There was once upon a time that to be a Republican in this area of the country felt a little bit like being Gary Cooper in High Noon, outnumbered in a big way. But I remember the story of a fellow who was running for office as a Republican, and he was in a rural area and it wasn't known to be Republican, and he stopped by a farm to do some campaigning. And when the farmer heard he was a Republican, his jaw dropped and he said, "Wait right here till I go get Ma. She's never seen a Republican before." So he got her, and the candidate looked around for a podium from which to give his speech, and the only thing he could find was a pile of that stuff that Bess Truman took 35 years trying to get Harry to call fertilizer. So he got up on the mound, and when they came back, he gave his speech. And at the end of it, the farmer said, "That's the first time I ever heard a Republican speech." And the candidate said, "That's the first time I've ever given a Republican speech from a Democratic platform." There was once all out of public.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelins, Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon. Today is Thursday, therefore, it's the aftermath. I quantify the aftermath as everything that wouldn't fit into the Tuesday show, that for whatever reason I just didn't handle on the Sackheads show. And so I'm going to handle on today. What is today? Today is May 18th, year of our Lord 2017. So, belly up to the bar. We've kept you a seat and it's great to see you back. Snowball is going to be a bartender tonight. She pours with the best of them, and the lava lamp is lighted. It's been lighted for about 45 minutes now. We don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all here at the Saloon. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but damn it, the drinks aren't. All that we ask is that you flush the toilet, for God's sake. Jiggle the handle. Don't let the water run. Don't forget to tip your waitress. Tonight, I have the honor of reintroducing one of the best entrepreneurs, raconteurs, and conservatives from here till doomsday, and that would be the brilliant Pat Dollard of patdollard.com. We're going to talk to him at the bottom of the hour. He said that he's going to be here for about a half hour. If I can convince him to do another segment of up to an hour, we'll just play it by ear, see how that works out. Again, just like Monday when I was speaking on Ken McClinton's show, just like Tuesday when I was speaking on my show, just like Sackheads last night, and now it's Thursday, so it's the aftermath. This has not been what one would term a not a very active news week. Holy crap, has it been active. Tons and tons of news stories. And, of course, I tell you all this stuff. It's customary for me to say, okay, you're going to hear this and this and this and this. Might never get around to half of it. And so there, in Spreaker, because we're on Spreaker, before you start the show, you have to put in what you're going to talk about. I don't talk about half of that stuff because there's just so much to talk about and in such depth and such detail. But we're going to do something that every once in a while I've done before, which is read an article to you. And, I use articles from all over the internet, all sorts of sources, all sorts of audio cuts, etc. And I think I've only read an article on my show twice because they were of such great significance and of such wonderful insight. And actually, the truth is, when I got through with those articles, after reading them first myself, I said to myself, oh my God, why couldn't I have written that? Well, I found another one of those articles, and it's one by Victor Davis Hanson. Victor Davis Hanson is a professor of history at Fresno State University in Fresno, Fornicalia, south of where I am, in the belly of the beast, in Sacramento. He's a wonderful, incredible scholar and author of a number of books. And so he's got an article that I am going to read to you. It's called The Russian Farce. And speaking of that, we're going to listen to James Clapper talk about what he thinks in terms of Russian evidence. We're going to talk about Mr. Obama and actually colluding with Russia. We're going to weigh in with lovely Dianne Feinstein. What does she think about Russia and evidence? Well, she actually drew a conclusion. So we know that Obama colluded with Russia. You're going to hear it once again, just as a friendly little reminder. And this is where it starts to get tricky. This is where I wonder if I'm going to have time to put all this stuff in here, depending on when Mr. Dahlin calls in. Allegedly, he's going to call in at the bottom of the hour, and he's going to speak for about a half hour. Maybe I can get him to talk a little bit longer. But what is this thing with former FBI Director Mueller? What is that about? Why a special counsel? What does it mean? We're going to talk about that. Well, as a matter of fact, where's the special counsel? Where's the special investigator for Loretta Lynch? Then there's information that Trump is going to finally interview 4 people for FBI director. We have information that Sheriff David Clark of Milwaukee County is going to Homeland Security. I'm really, really going to try to find time for this, squeeze it in one way or the other. People have asked, and I've searched high and low, there are leakers in the White House. I am convinced, without a doubt, there are leakers in the White House. And I think everybody else who's a sane, rational thinking individual knows that too. Tonight, I'm going to name names right here on the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. Then we're going to have a wonderful interview, crossed fingers, when Tucker Carlson, again one of my absolute favorite interviewers, speaks with Dr. Stephen Cohen about Russia, and he is a Russian expert par excellence. Ex-CIA Director Woolsey, he weighs in on President Trump and intelligence, and if I get to all of that tonight, I will be absolutely gobsmacked that I was able to crush that into 2 hours and a couple of breaks. Absolutely incredible. We talked to the Sackheads show. I was on the Sackheads show, Sackheads radio show, and it's on every Wednesday beginning at 8 p.m., same time as my show, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. And we had, it was sort of a bifurcated show because Sackheads Clint was not here. So that's 3 weeks now that we've been out without the full triumvirate. And I'm hoping that next week we can have everybody there. And I almost, damn it, you guys are either going to hate me or you're going to love me. I'm not sure which. Sean, air quotes, trained me, air quotes, on how to use the system to put the camera up on YouTube. So don't go look into YouTube because I'm not that brave right now. But maybe next week, either Tuesday or Thursday, I'm going to see if it's feasible for me to try to do something of that nature to get that together. I'm not sure that you guys are actually going to want to see me. It's enough, I would say, that I completely screw up the air in the video on the Sackheads radio show. In chat, we have everyone. We also have Dave Milner and one viewer who I shall not unmask because I am not the United States Snakes government. Anyway, I told you that I've got this article. It came out of National Review. That's nationalreview.com. It's written by Victor Davis Hanson, and it's called The Russian Farce. And as I indicated, it's a great article, and it starts out like this. Remember when Obama and Hillary cozied up to Putin? And recall when the media rejoiced at surveillance leaks about Team Trump? The American left used to lecture the nation about its supposedly paranoid suspicions of Russia. The World War II alliance with Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union had led many leftists to envision a continuing post-war friendship with Russia. During the subsequent Cold War, American liberals felt that the right had unnecessarily become paranoid about Soviet Russia, logically culminating in the career of the demagogic Senator Joe McCarthy. Stop. It's not in here, but would you be surprised that unearthed KGB records showed that Joe McCarthy was actually correct? And now what once was the KGB is now the SVR. Just a little aside. Later in movies such as 7 Days in May, Dr. Strangelove, stop, one of my all-time favorite movies. I love Dr. Strangelove and Peter Sellers. Poor Peter passed away in 1980. And the movie The Russians Are Coming, Hollywood focused on American neuroses as much as Russian hostility for strained relations. In the great chess rivalry of 1972, known as the Match of the Century, American liberals favored Russian Grand Master Boris Spassky over fellow countryman Bobby Fischer, who embarrassed them by daring to win. In the same manner, Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev was often portrayed in the media as the urbane, suave, and reasonable conciliator, while President Ronald Reagan was depicted as the uncouth disruptor of what could have been improved Russian-American relations. Senator Ted Kennedy reportedly reached out to Soviet leader Yuri Andropov in 1984 to gain his help in denying Reagan his election. Feature that. Democrats at work. In sum, the American left always felt that Russia was unduly demonized by the American right and was a natural friend, if not a potential ally, of the United States. That tradition no doubt influenced the decision of the incoming Obama administration to immediately reach out to Vladimir Putin's Russia, despite its recent aggressions in Georgia and steady crackdown on internet dissent, and despite Russia's estrangement from the prior Bush administration. Obama's entreaty to the Russians. We all remember this. In March 2012, in a meeting with President Dmitry Medvedev of Russia, Barack Hussein Obama thought his microphone was either off or could not pick up the eerie assurances that he gave the Russian president. On all these issues, but particularly missile defense, this can be solved, but it's important for him, meaning Vladimir Putin, to give me space. So President Medvedev responded, yeah, I understand. I understand your message about space. Space for you. Obama agreed and elaborated. This is my last election. After my election, I have more flexibility. Stop. Flexibility. No one seems to reference that anymore. We continue. Medvedev finished the hot mic conversation with, I understand. I will transmit this information to Vladimir, and I stand with you. So a fair interpretation of this stealthy conversation would run as follows. I understand. I will transmit this information to Vladimir, and I stand with you. Medvedev to Obama, March 2012. Barack Obama naturally wanted to continue a fourth year of his reset and outreach to Vladimir Putin, the same way that he was reaching out to other former American enemies such as, remember this, the Iranians and then the Cubans. Yet Obama was uneasy that his opponent Mitt Romney might attack him during his re-election campaign as an appeaser of Putin. Thus, to preempt any such attack, Obama might be forced to appear less flexible, offer less space toward Putin than he otherwise would be in a non-election year. In other words, he couldn't publicly assure Putin that he would be flexible about implementing missile defense in Eastern Europe. All these issues until after he was re-elected. An apprehensive Obama in his hot mic moment was signaling that after his anticipated victory he would revert to his earlier reset with Putin. And most significantly, Obama wished Putin to appreciate in advance the motives for Obama's campaign year behavior, or he at least hoped that Putin would not embarrass him by making international moves that would reflect poorly on Obama's reset policy. Furthermore, Obama did not want his implicit quid pro quo proposal to become part of the public record. Had it been public, it might have been interpreted as a message to Putin that he should empathize with Obama's plight and that he should interfere with the American election by behaving in a way that would empower Obama's candidacy rather than detract from it. In the present hysterical climate, now substitute the name Trump for Obama, and we would be hearing Democratic demands for impeachment on grounds that Trump was caught secretly whispering to the Russians about compromising vital national security issues in a quid pro quo meant to affect the outcome of the 2012 election. Stop. You and I both know that that is absolutely correct. That's kind of what I call doing the logical conclusion, or the reversal theory. In other words, as I've said for a long time, there is no equality until everyone is equal. In this world, in these United States, everyone is not equal, particularly in the political room, in the political realm that we have going on today. So Victor Davis Hanson is absolutely correct to do the reversal and say, had it in fact been a 180, you know what the results would have been. Victor Davis Hanson continues under this headline, The Architects of Russian Outreach. The Obama administration came up with a reset, soft glove approach to Vladimir's Russia, characterized by Secretary Hillary Clinton's heralded pushing of the red plastic button on March 6, 2009 in Geneva. Reset was couched in overt criticism of George W. Bush, who had supposedly alienated Putin by reacting too harshly, like a typical cowboy, to Russia's aggression in Georgia. So over the next few years, the reset policy consisted of, among other things, backtracking on previously agreed-on missile defense plans in Eastern Europe. In the second presidential debate of 2012, Obama portrayed Romney as being too tough on Russia, to the point of delusion. A few months ago, when you were asked, what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia, not al-Qaeda. You said Russia in the 1980s. They're now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because you know the Cold War has been over for 20 years. That's Obama speaking to Mitt Romney. The Obama administration invited Russia into the Middle East for the first time in nearly a half century to help Obama back off from his own red line threats to attack Syria if evidence of WMD usage appeared. Moreover, after the Crimea and eastern Ukraine aggressions, the perception in most of the Western world was that the U.S. was not sufficiently tough with Putin, largely because of its commitment to a prior, though failed, outreach. So, Victor Davis Hanson asks, what ended this one-sided reset in 2016? What indeed? The estrangement certainly did not coincide entirely with Putin's aggressions on Russian borders. Nor were Democrats inordinately angry with Putin when he bombed non-al-Qaeda Syrian resistance fighters. Rather, Democrats' split with Putin grew from the perception that hackers had easily entered the porous email account of Hillary Clinton's campaign guru, John Podesta, and released his messages to WikiLeaks. This led to general embarrassment, or even corporal embarrassment or admiral embarrassment for Hillary and the Democrats. That's my editorial, not Victor Davis Hanson's. And they floated the theory that WikiLeaks and Julian Assange were taking orders from Putin, or at least operating with the encouragement of the Kremlin's intelligence services. A new paragraph entitled Hating Hillary. After the WikiLeaks mess, the image of Putin was reset again And now he was said to have ordered the hacking because he hated Hillary Clinton and indeed the Obama administration in general. Victor Davis Hanson writes, "That was a bizarre indictment. If Putin were really a conniving realist, he would have much preferred Hillary in the 2016 election, given his success in manipulating the Obama-era reset." Stop. Yes. Exactly, VDH. That's the point. Thank you for making it in an eloquent fashion. He continues, "Unlike Trump, Clinton would probably have kept the radical Obama defense cuts and perpetuated the restrictions on domestic energy development that were helping Russia. She probably would have likewise continued Obama's therapeutic approach to foreign policy." Editorial insertion by BZ here, leading from the rear. That's a stupid statement. How anyone could believe that, that's... Anyway, okay, Democrats, there you go. VDH continues, "From Russia's point of view, considering their strategic and economic interests, a pliable Obama 2.0 would have been far better than Trump, with his pro-oil and gas domestic agenda, his promised defense buildup, and his unpredictable Jacksonian promises to help friends and hurt enemies." Victor Davis Hanson writes a new paragraph, squaring the surveillance circle. "The entire Trump collusion with Russia narrative has now descended into incoherence." Absolutely. For 5 months, dating back to the heated final stretch of the 2016 election, mainstream media, in particular Obama administration pet reporters at the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the BBC, ran creepy and occasionally near obscene stories about collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. These published rumors were based on, quote, unnamed sources, unquote, often identified generically as American intelligence officers inside the FBI, CIA, and NSA. Soon that narrative went from ominous to hysterical, but only once Hillary inexplicably lost the election. The anonymous allegations of collusion were used to convict the Trump circle of a veritable pre-election partnership with the Russians. The collusion was to be followed, the story went, with a new reset with Putin, this time born not out of naivete, but of lucre and near treason. We forget that the Democrats' narratives of the purported Trump collusion also radically changed to meet changing circumstances. Thank you, VDH. Before the election, a sure and poor loser Trump was pathetically cheating with the Russians to stop the fated winner Clinton. Then, in the post-election shock and transition, the Russian interference storyline was repackaged as an excuse now for the poorly conducted Clinton campaign that had blown a supposedly big lead and sure victory. The Russians did it was preferable to blaming Hillary for not visiting Wisconsin once. Finally, Trump's Russian connection served as a useful tool to delegitimize an abhorrent incoming Trump administration. And the delegitimizing was made easier by Obama's 11th hour order, days before his departure, to expand the list. This cannot be underestimated, what he's writing now. Days before Obama's departure, to expand the list of federal officials who would have access to sensitive intelligence and surveillance transcripts. Stop. That's Obama laying landmines, political landmines, in the landscape, and that was done purposefully. No mention of that by the American media maggots who are in the pocket of the Democrats, and certainly Barack Hussein Obama. Hanson continues, but all such accusations of Trump-Russian complicity based on admitted leaks from intelligence agencies required some sort of hard evidence. Leaked transcripts of Trump officials clearly outlining shared strategies with the Russians, hard proof of Russian electronic tampering in key swing states, doctored emails planted in the Podesta WikiLeaks trove, travel records of Trump people in clandestine meetings with Russian counterparts, or bank records showing cash payoffs. Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation had as many financial dealings with pro-Russian interests as did Trump people. Yet, a hostile media in collusion with intelligence agency leakers has so far provided no such proof. John Podesta had as much invested in Russian profiteering as did former Trump aides. Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation had as many financial dealings with pro-Russian interests as did Trump people. The ubiquitous Russian ambassador had met as many Democratic grandees as had Trump associates. The lack so far of hard proof gradually created a boomerang effect. Attention turned away from what, quote, unnamed sources had alleged to the question of how unnamed sources had gathered surveillance of the Trump people in the first place, as evidenced by media reports of General Flynn's conversations, of Trump's private talks with foreign leaders, and of allegations of electronic contact between Russian and Trump Tower computers. In other words, Victor Davis Hanson writes, the media and their sources had gambled that congressional overseers, law enforcement, and the public would all overlook surveillance that may have been illegal or only partly legal, and they would also overlook the clearly illegal leaking of such classified information on a candidate and a president-elect if it all resulted in a scandal of the magnitude of the Pentagon Papers or Watergate. So far, such a scandal has not emerged, but Trump's opponents continued to push the Russian narrative not because it is believable, but because it exhausts and obfuscates likely illegal surveillance and leaking. Thank you very much. Again, an exquisitely written article. He continues, the real scandal is probably not going to be Trump's contacts with Russians. More likely, it will be the rogue work of a politically driven group of intelligence officers embedded within the bureaucracy who either in freelancing mode or in Henry II Thomas Becket fashion, who will rid me of all this meddlesome priest, with Obama administration officials began monitoring Team Trump, either directly or more likely through the excuse of inadvertently chancing upon conversations while monitoring supposedly suspicious foreign communications. Added to this mess is the role of three unsympathetic characters who are on record as either not telling the truth, deliberately obfuscating it, or showing terrible judgment. Obama CIA Director John Brennan, who assumed that role after the still mysterious and abrupt post-election departure of David Petraeus, has a long history of political gymnastics. He's made many a necessary career readjustment to changing Washington politics. He is on record as being deceptive. He failed to reveal that the CIA intercepted Senate communications. He also stated falsely that the drone program had not resulted in a single collateral death. And in the spirit of Obama's new Islamic outreach, Brennan strangely suggested that jihad was a sort of personal odyssey rather than a call to use force in spreading Islamic influence. Brennan is also on record as critical of Trump. Trump, quote, should be ashamed of himself, Brennan said, the day after the inauguration in response to Trump's speech to CIA staffers gathered in front of the memorial wall of agency heroes. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper has in the past lied to Congress when he assured that the NSA did not monitor the communications of American citizens. Stop. Boy, do I remember that, and it's all over YouTube, of course, anytime you want to stop and pick it up. Likewise, he bizarrely asserted that the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt was largely a secular organization. And more than 50 CENTCOM officers formally accused Clapper of distorting their reports about the Islamic State. Like Brennan, Clapper has been critical of Trump, asking who benefits from a president-elect trashing the intelligence community. There's more to this article. Of course, because we are who we are the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. It's Thursday, it's May 18th, the year of our Lord 2017. You're listening to The Aftermath with myself, the bloviating Zeppelin. And so with luck, crossed fingers, etc., when we come back after the break, we'll be speaking to Patrick Dollard. And with luck, we'll have a very interesting conversation with him. And yes and no, we'll still continue with that letter. And boy, have I got a lot of stuff to tell you. about tonight. Oh, my God. So please, stay tuned. Come back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Breaking news. According to the latest report coming out of SHR Media, a merchandise store to support both the Reaver of Common Sense and SHR Media has just been unleashed to the general public. Be forewarned that this site can be contagious and numerous items can be purchased to support the best news programming. Go to Reaver.one website and click on the store link to check out the merchandise.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Times are dark. The people misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation in confusion needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Live Rebooting Liberty, and YouTube for a unique brand of commentary on the unpleasant blind guide. Because truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
Beware, the Jersey Takeover is here. Every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the Reaver of Common Sense show, hosted by Jersey Joe, right here on shrmedia.com and highplainsdailynews.com. Only Jersey can deliver hell like no one else, so consider this your fair warning.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
And you are, in fact, listening to the bloviating Zeppelin. It is he, speaking here live and direct in the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for being in chat. Thank you for listening live, and also thank you for listening in podcast. At this point, we've still got everyone, Dave Milner, one viewer, and we had Dan, HP Pundit, in here for a while. And if there's one thing that radio, Dave knows this is true, do you not, sir? If there's one thing you know about radio is, I call it the Semper Gumby effect. Always flexible. One must continue to be flexible. So, I'm going to wait to see if Pat Dollard calls in. In the meantime, we were discussing, I was reading an article about the Russians written by Victor Davis Hanson in nationalreview.com, an excellent, excellent article. I'm reading the whole thing because he says exactly what I wish I could have written about the Russians and the insanity that's going on with regard to the Russians. And we continue with the article written by Victor Davis Hanson. During the 2016 election, FBI Director James Comey popped up to assure the nation that while Hillary Clinton had conducted herself unethically and probably was in violation of federal statutes in using her private email server for government business and wiping away correspondence, her transgressions did not rise to the level of indictable offenses. It was as if the investigator Comey, rather than the appropriate federal attorney, was adjudicating the decision to charge a suspect. Stop. Yes, that's exactly what happened, and that was the beginning of Comey's demise right there. Jim Comey should have learned at that point, July 5th, after getting the immediate feedback that he did, and I know he got terrible feedback from certain people, he should have listened to what the people around him said as a result of that, which was essentially this. FBI agents and FBI directors keep their hands to themselves, keep their investigations to themselves, and they keep primarily their mouths shut. Then, in the final stretch, in the final stretch of the race, Comey resurfaced to assert that new evidence had led him to reconsider the exculpation of Clinton. And then on November 6, 2016, just hours before the nation went to the polls, he appeared a third time in front of cameras to reiterate his original judgment that Hillary's transgressions did not merit further investigation, much less criminal prosecutions. The media contextualized Comey's schizophrenia as seesaw reactions either to liberal Obama administration pressures or to near revolts among the more conservative FBI rank and file. Stop. As I said, that's pretty much what occurred. He caught a lot of crap for all of those outbursts, and rightly so. Friends. I happen to know that friends of Jim Comey took him aside at various points and asked, Jim, what are you doing? His wife asked him, is it all worth it? What is it that you're doing? Do you not want to perhaps reconsider some of these things? So that's true. That's absolutely true. Just as likely was Comey's own neurotic itch to seek public attention and to position himself favorably with a likely new president. The underlying subtext behind that is he wanted to keep his job. How did Obama's naive pro-Putin reset and Clinton family profiteering transmogrify into wild accusations that others had become even friendlier to such an unsavory character? Comey's weird election-era prominence was also apparently fueled by the fact that Attorney General Loretta Lynch was caught in an embarrassing private meeting on the tarmac with Bill Clinton, a meeting during the investigation of his spouse, Hillary. The encounter was intended to remain secret, but a local reporter was tipped off. That unethical encounter had tainted Lynch's pose of disinterested adjudication, and she accordingly de facto fobbed off her prosecutorial responsibilities to Comey. Comey most lately has asked the Justice Department to refute Trump's claims that he was subject to electronic surveillance by the government during the last days of the Obama administration. Stop. Although Donald Trump, being a neophyte, did not use the word surveillance, which is what he meant, he said wiretap. You don't wiretap these days. Given the past assertions and political natures of Brennan, Clapper, and Comey, none are very credible in any future testimony they might give about the Trump-Russian narrative or the role U.S. intelligence agencies played in the possible illegal monitoring of Trump associates. All three men are even less credible when it comes to the illegal leaking of such classified information to media outlets. Trump's infamous and clumsy tweet, "Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower," may well prove to be inaccurate, literally, But it could also end up being prescient if revelations show that Obama-appointed officials or their underlings used surveillance on foreign officials 3 years after the NSA got caught tapping Angela Merkel's cell phone in order to sweep up Trump communications and then leak them to the media to damage his candidacy and later his transition. Stop. The Democrats are saying that Trump is interfering in elections, that the Russians are interfering in American elections. Victor Davis Hanson just wrote that under the Obama administration, they were tapping Angela Merkel's phone in order to somehow influence that election as well. And do we somehow forget that Obama purposely sent individuals to Israel to influence negatively Benjamin Netanyahu's re-election? And yet it's the Russians that are interfering with American elections. Isn't that rich? We are left in the end with paradoxes. How did Obama's naive pro-Putin reset and Clinton family profiteering transmogrify into wild accusations that others had become even friendlier to such an unsavory character? How did the image of a sacrosanct media speaking the truth of Trump's collusion with Putin rest on the peddling of false narratives, many of them based on likely illegal surveillance and certainly unethical and unlawful dissemination? And if Trump was unhinged for leveling wild allegations based on mainstream news reports, why were news outlets themselves and those who quoted them chapter and verse not unhinged for spreading such suddenly unreliable information? What is the explanatory sword that cuts this Gordian knot? Trump supposedly had zero chance of winning. But when he did, facts had to adjust to a bitter actuality. At first, perhaps to explain away reality, but quite soon after to alter it by any means necessary. And that's why I read that article by Victor Davis Hanson. Sharp insight into what's actually occurring. Insight to the point that you'll only read it on National Review. No one else in the American media maggot sphere is going to pick up anything by Victor Davis Hanson. He reveals the truth. And the truth does in fact set you free. And the truth is exactly not what the American media maggots or the Democrats wish you to hear. So we all know that Trump is attempting to operate as best he can under a massive, massive disadvantage. Inherently, we know that. You can see it on TV, all the cable shows, all the time, 24/7. Here's an article from Breitbart.com. And if you didn't think that it was this deep and this thick, I think you'll begin to understand just how deep and thick it is once I go through this. The headline is, Trump under siege. More than 60% of NSC employees placed by Obama. Calls are growing for President Trump to clean house at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue after a series of leaks aimed at embarrassing and undermining the president sprung from the White House this week. A White House source estimates more than 60% of employees at the National Security Council are not Trump administration appointees, but career officials who were appointed to the White House from other agencies under the Obama administration. The source said there are whole departments at the NSC with only one Trump appointee. I think the lesson here is that these things are going to continue to happen until the Trump White House does a serious house cleaning, said Fred Fleitz, a former CIA and Bush administration official. Now under civil service rules, stop. That's going to be the problem. When you're talking about people that are middle managers and high-level managers, for example, in the state of Fornicalia, where I live, the state of Fornicalia has what they call CEAs. And those are people that are essentially appointed by the governor. The governor in the state of Fornicalia is Jerry Brown, dementia-ridden as he is. CEAs are like little gods over all the departments in the state of California. But a CEA can come and go at political will, and generally with a new regime coming in, a lot of the CEAs go out. Boom, gone. They're political. They're appointed politically, and they know that their tenure is good as long as whoever appointed them is still hanging around and is surviving politically. But CEA, in state of fornicalia parlance, also stands for this: career ends abruptly because of the political orientation of that sort of thing. Now, those are the mid to high level managers. So it is for the state. So it is for the federal government as well. The big issue, and that's why I stopped to go back to this story, now under civil service rules, it's difficult to fire them, and I'm not sure they should be fired, but they can be reassigned. And people who are going to promote the president's policies rather than undermine them, he needs to put those people in place, he added. The White House did not respond immediately to a request for comment on whether it would reassign or appoint new NSC officials anytime soon. Earlier this week, quote, current and former officials leaked to the Washington Post that Trump had discussed highly classified information with Russian officials last week. A day later, an, quote, associate of former FBI Director James Comey told the New York Times that Comey allegedly wrote a memo saying Trump had asked him to end his investigation of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. I can just go over this very briefly. Sometimes I sound like a broken record. I discussed this at length in Sackheads last night. How credible do you give an individual who says something over the telephone to you? You're a reporter. This individual whom you really don't know and you've really never met says that he's an associate. You take it on fact that he's an associate, and the person reads a memo over the telephone to you, and then you decide that that's news. And because the information, quote, information, air quotes, of that memo is in keeping with your philosophy of anti-Trumpism, and that Trump must go, you decide that you're going to print everything that was said. And you do, and that's where that came from. Then a current and former official, quotes, presumably the same ones who talked to the Post, revealed to the New York Times that Israel was the source of the information Trump spoke about with Russian officials about. Flights believes it's those career officials assigned to the NSC under Obama who leaked Trump's conversation with Russian officials to former Obama officials and media outlets. I understand there was something called a memcon, a memo of conversation, that was written on it, and I suspect that document may have reached people in these various agencies who'd been put in place, promoted by the Obama administration. They're Obama loyalists, and they're just aching for information that they can use to undermine the president, he said. Precisely what's occurring. At the NSC, there's no confirmation process. People can be let go immediately, and new people can be brought in, he added. But a major problem for the Trump administration is that there is no budget to bring in new people at the NSC until September, when the new fiscal year starts, and the White House source said that. But compounding the problem is that there are also hundreds, let me repeat that, there are literally hundreds of political positions currently unfilled at departments that interface with the NSC, such as State and Defense. For example, so far, out of 57 Senate-confirmed political appointee positions at the Pentagon, only 2 of them have been filled. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, excellent appointment, and Air Force Secretary Heather Wilson. Flights recommended the Trump administration move much faster on getting these slots filled, both those that require Senate confirmation and those that don't. Concerning positions that require confirmation, you can put in people in an interim basis, he said. Congress has absolutely no say over that. I don't doubt Congress will try to slow roll trying to put in confirmed people, but they can't be blocked. The process has to start for many, many of these positions, hundreds of them, confirmed positions. There haven't even been nominations, he said. Their names have to be put forward in front of the Senate. Let the Democrats play their games. We'll have them in place in a couple of months, maybe a few months. He also recommended immediately filling positions that don't require Senate confirmation. But below that level, we can start staffing these positions right now. Right now, that process has to start. I say the deputy assistant secretary level, deputy undersecretary, these are unconfirmed positions, meaning that they don't have to be approved by Congress. Office directors in place, like the State Department and the Defense Department, this is something that this administration needs to start moving on, he said. In some cases, political appointees have also burrowed in. Obama political appointees have burrowed into the civil service, which serves from administration to administration. There are even some Obama political appointees who have been appointed positions in the Trump administration. Calls have been growing for the Trump administration to identify and prosecute the source of the leaks, including it from at least one Democrat. Former House member Dennis Kucinich said on Fox News Tuesday, "We need to ask questions about why is this intelligence community trying to upend the President of the United States." My God. That from Kucinich colored me shocked. Look, he says, I disagree with President Trump on a number of issues, but on this one, there can only be one president, and somebody in the intelligence community is trying to upend this president in order to pursue a policy direction that puts us in conflict with Russia. The question is why and who? We need to find out. The leaker should be brought to justice, said Senator James Risch. The real story here is there's a weasel here, obviously. That's the person who reported about this conversation. This is a person who is a traitor. They betrayed their own country. They betrayed their families and their neighbors. And when you disclose classified information, classified conversations that you have access to, it is an act of treason, he said on PBS NewsHour Wednesday. He or she should be held to answer for that and treated as any treasonous person would be. And that's this. You're going to have to make an example out of people like this. You're going to have an investigation. I insist, make it criminal. Make it a criminal investigation. And then put someone in prison. And put them in prison for a long time, as long as you can. Under these various USC laws, United States codes, the times they can range from 5 to 10 years for these sorts of things. Someone needs to be made an example of, and shortly. Now, we talked about James Clapper, who may or may not have a lot of veracity behind him, but in a rare, where this came from, I don't know. On Meet the Press, James Clapper happened to say this.
Does intelligence exist that can definitively answer the following question, whether there were improper contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian officials?
We did not include any evidence in our report, and I say our, that's NSA, FBI, and CIA with my office, the Director of National Intelligence, that had any reflection of collusion between members of the Trump campaign and the Russians. There was no evidence of that included in our report.
I understand that, but does it exist?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, that's pretty conclusive. That's from James Clapper. Now, again, I'm going to go back to Breitbart.com. This story came out today, Thursday, because Dianne Feinstein obviously knew that the aftermath was going to be later on tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific. Thank you for that. Kudos to you, ma'am. She said on CNN, here's the headline from Breitbart. Feinstein, I haven't seen any evidence of collusion between Trump campaign and the Russians. Really? You're going to say that? Absolutely astounding. The article goes on like this. On Thursday's broadcast of CNN's Situation Room, Senator Dianne Feinstein stated that she has not seen any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and that Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation is the one that would bring forward solid evidence on which you could base a criminal case and indict someone. Anchor Wolf Blitzer asked, the last time we spoke, Senator, I asked you if you'd actually seen evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and you said to me, and I'm quoting you now, you said, not at this time. Has anything changed since we spoke last? Stop. I happened to play that very same cut for you earlier this week on Tuesday, and I told you that as soon as Wolf Blitzer got the answer that he didn't want, he immediately cut away. Well, he asks the question again. This time, on CNN, Feinstein says, well, no, it hasn't. So I would depend on this investigation that we're talking about that would bring forward any criminal activity and, of course, has the right and the ability to charge people, select targets, look at them, bring about an indictment. So it's a very big investigation. I think somebody that's as sophisticated as Bob Mueller is really the one to carry it out and see that it does not go away, that it does not overreach, but that's what it should be. Blitzer then follows up with this. So far, you have not seen any evidence of collusion. Is that right? Dianne Feinstein, of all people. Di-Fi responds, well, evidence that would establish that there's no collusion? Evidence that would establish that there's collusion? There are all kinds of rumors around. There are newspaper stories, but that's not necessarily evidence. And so you've got the Intelligence Committee looking at it, and you will have the Mueller investigation going on, and it's the Mueller investigation that would bring forward solid evidence on which you could base a criminal case and indict someone. The point being, out of all of that, you've even got Dianne Feinstein, along with James Clapper, saying that there's no collusion. Well, remember the Victor Davis Hanson article a couple of minutes ago? Here's what we were talking about. You want collusion? You want to hear a president colluding with the Russians? I'm pretty sure this would suffice.
My last election, yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah, I understand. I trusted this foundation to religion that I messed up.
That's Barack Hussein Obama saying to President Medvedev, just as Victor David Hanson wrote, that, hey, I'm going to be a lot more flexible with you Ruskies a little bit later on once I know that I'm going to be elected in my second term. Because you know what? I like you guys. And I'm going to make sure that you get just about whatever you want, including a Russian reset. Complaints, yelling, screaming from the American media maggots? Isn't that weird? Did you hear any then? Well, I certainly didn't. Come on back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians,
You got a business. That you didn't build that.
a team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying coffee was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
The bloviating Zeppelin. He's big-footed enough radio shows to last a lifetime, courtesy of Sean, Clint, Ken, and Jersey Joe. Now it's time for him to waddle on his own 2 feet via the glorious SHR Media. Gird thy loins for the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, coming soon to ossicles near you. Excelsior.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Well, what have we learned? We've learned a lot about the Russians, we've learned a lot from Victor Davis Hanson, and we've learned that at least on this radio show, one must be semper gumby. That is to say, always flexible. And I think that's about all I'm going to say on that. But that doesn't stop us, does it? No, it doesn't, because nothing is going to stop the saloon from opening and providing its luscious liquid beverages whenever it wishes. Now, we know that the Justice Department decided that it's going to, and did, appoint former FBI Director Robert Mueller as a special counsel for this Russian investigation. And yet, all along, we've heard people essentially say, from Clapper to Dianne Feinstein, there's no there. Yet, just because that appears to be at this point the truth, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So if you're a good Democrat, what do? You keep on insisting. You keep on insisting. First, you wanted a special prosecutor. You got to prosecute Trump. You have to prosecute him because what's the ultimate goal? Go ahead, after me. 1, 2, 3. One word. Go ahead, say it. Impeachment. That's the goal. Maxine Waters started it, and she's like a surfer riding on a great wave right now. She wants impeachment. She doesn't really give a shit about what it's about, whether there is a there, whether there are facts. She just wants it done, and she wants it done right now, immediately. That's what this is all leading to, a cascading wave of as many Democrats as possible insisting impeach. That's what we have to do. We have to get rid of Trump, and we have to do it immediately. The Justice Department tapped former FBI Director Robert Mueller to be a special counsel overseeing the Russian investigation, the DOJ announced yesterday. The news comes as President Trump and his administration grapple with the... this is from USA Today. So now you'll begin to understand the slant. Oh, slant! No. That's American Media Maggot News. There can't be any slant on that, can there? With the fallout from explosive revelations earlier this week that now fired FBI Director James Comey kept notes of a February meeting indicating Trump asked him to close the agency's investigation to former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The memo, blah, blah, blah. Unique circumstances. I determined that it's in the best interest, memo, blah, blah, blah. After the Justice Department's announcement, Trump on Wednesday night denied any collusion between his campaign and Russia and called for a quick end to the investigation. Interesting thing about Robert Mueller, now he's the only director that I'm aware of. Directors serve and are appointed by presidents, and they're supposed to serve terms of 10 years, and that's theoretically, so that their influence can be felt from one president to the next. And even further, their influence can be felt from more than, say, 2 administrations. So allegedly into another administration. The funny thing is, now, Robert Mueller was appointed by President Bush. And then as Obama came in, Obama asked Mueller to stay with him for another 2 years. That's kind of unusual. And so Mueller seems to be sort of the middle ground here that everybody sort of agrees. They have a pretty good confidence in his ability to conduct as middle ground an investigation as you're going to get. But I go back to this. I played this for you about 2 weeks ago. And it was released by Fox News. We'll get to Fox in just a second because Roger Ailes died today at the age of 77. We'll get back to this. But this that I'm going to play you is a cut that I've heard it on Fox twice, and that's all I've heard. And this Fox reporter found out information that was immediately buried that Loretta Lynch tried to cover for Hillary Clinton as much as possible. I played this before, but you've got to hear this again. And ask yourself, there's no investigation behind this of all things?
What we heard today for the first time were details about a document that related to Attorney General Loretta Lynch that had been obtained by Russian hackers, and that the document indicated that Lynch would do whatever it took to prevent criminal charges from being brought against Hillary Clinton.
Lynch would do whatever she could to prevent criminal charges against Hillary Clinton, both Democrats.
In the email probe. Let's listen.
The New York Times recently reported that the FBI had found a troubling email among the ones the Russians hacked from Democrat operatives. The email reportedly provided assurances that Attorney General Lynch would protect Secretary Clinton by making sure the FBI investigation, quote unquote, didn't go too far. How and when did you first learn of this document? Also, who sent it and who received it?
That's not a question I can answer in this forum, Mr. Chairman, because it would call for a classified response.
And that's Comey's response on damn near everything. He's not going to talk out loud. Now, I mentioned this on the Sackhead Show last night. Comey was supposed to have come back after his second hearing in public, and they wanted to make sure that he could come back and that he would speak behind closed doors. He purposely avoided doing that. I insist it's because with the ability to speak, not having to worry about allegedly releasing classified information in public, and he could speak covertly to people that could access that information, he didn't want to go there. So all this again brings James Comey, his probity, into question. Is he just a liar, a serial liar, bordering on a pathological liar? It's all about him. He's convinced me, and he's done an excellent job of doing so, that he's really fitting the bill for all of this. So when we talk about an investigation, and all the Democrats are saying they're focused like laser beams all on one person, Donald Trump. Isn't it odd, and continues to be odd, that they never once were interested remotely in focusing those investigations on fellow Democrats? Isn't that odd? Oh, come on. We all know why. Here's an article from thedailymail.com. Trump interviews 4 FBI director candidates, including Democrat Joe Lieberman. This is Joe Lieberman, who suggested newspapers can be prosecuted for reporting on classified documents. Well, isn't that interesting? Joe Lieberman is among 4 FBI director candidates interviewed on Wednesday, yesterday, by President Donald Trump. The former Democratic vice presidential candidate said in 2010 that newspapers could be prosecuted for publishing stories based on leaked classified materials. Stop. Knowing that, what do you suspect is the probability of all the Democrats lining up and saying, huzzah, huzzah, it's Joe Lieberman, he's a fellow Democrat, and he'll do us good? Interesting. Trump is aware of Lieberman's past comments, according to the White House. Other candidates to replace the fired James Comey include the acting director, a former FBI cyber and white-collar chief, and a former Oklahoma governor. Words to Donald Trump. Andrew McCabe, currently acting director of the FBI. He is a worm. He is a squirming grub in the festering political cesspool that the FBI building has now become. The FBI building on Pennsylvania has become a festering cesspool of political sludge. If you fucking put him in there, President Trump, just as I said to you, sir, about the removal of James Comey because he's become nothing but an obstructionist and an underminer, oh, my fuck's sake, you haven't seen obstruction and undermining until you put McCabe, if you do that, as your director. This is the guy whose wife, Jill, took hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Democrats and Terry McAuliffe, Virginia governor, backing Democrats. And this is the same James Comey with this obvious, glaring conflict of interest. Again, James Comey makes the screwed up decision, well, you know, I don't see any conflict. Do you? Do the reversal. If they were Republicans involved and it was a Republican, somebody that obviously leans to the right as an assistant director, and hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash were funneled, and she touched it, in terms of a Republican governor, Terry McAuliffe. Let's just change the D to an R. Do you think the American media maggots would have left that alone for a second? And do you think that a director would have said, oh, no, nothing to see here, no conflict of interest whatsoever, just move along? I don't think so. Under consideration, besides Joe Lieberman, is Press Secretary Sean Spicer said, our acting director, Andrew McCabe, just told you all about him, former Oklahoma Governor Frank Keating, and Richard McFeely, a former FBI executive assistant director who was in charge of investigating white-collar and organized crime along with cyber cases. I still have some contacts that I still speak with, and I haven't specifically named names yet. I haven't thrown out names to see what particular individuals think about them. But my immediate feeling is on this: no one from the FBI, no one in middle management or upper management, no one should be appointed as FBI director. It really should come from outside. And of all the people, would I have liked to have seen Trey Gowdy? We talked about this last night. Yes, I would have. But even Trey Gowdy said, nope, not going to do it. Taking my hat out of the ring because I don't care, nor do I wish to have the scrutiny that's going to come down on whomever the potential FBI director is named. I don't want that scrutiny. It's going to cut like a knife, and I don't want to put myself through it, and I don't want to put my family through it. And isn't that a hell of a comment? I think it's a comment for the times that we're in right now. Very, very sad. But these guys were already seen going into and exiting the White House. So one of the big questions that I have is this the final crew? Is this the final cut? I don't quite know. I don't quite know at all. Now, some inside baseball kind of stuff. I mentioned the name Sean Spicer. And there's another assistant press secretary, Sarah Huckabee. Apparently, for whatever reason, you guys might know better, Sean Spicer is on the outs. Sean Spicer has done incredible work on trying to hold up Donald Trump and trying to interpret what sometimes is incontrovertibly untranslatable from Trump. How Sean Spicer has managed to exist and function at all in this kind of a background is fairly astounding. So for whatever reason, it looks like Sean Spicer is going to be leaving, and more often we're going to see Ms. Huckabee in front of the camera. But it also makes me wonder, perhaps justifiably so, makes me wonder how long is the press conference going to continue, the daily press conference. I don't think Trump has any love for that either. I also mentioned Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes, who is essentially the, for all intents and purposes, the creator of Fox News back in 1996 when they were just sort of a thought in Rupert Murdoch's head. I have to hand it to Roger Ailes. He passed away at age 77 today, and he did a hell of a job. Now, for the last 2 years, he was tainted by all sorts of sexual innuendos, allegations, suits, etc., that his wife should have to put up with something like that. That's a terrible thing. But I still have to hand it to the guy. He had a vision, and he enabled his vision. People say a lot of different things about Fox. I still watch a lot of Fox News. I'm not a 24/7 watcher. I'm rather selective. My favorite dude right now is Tucker Carlson. I think he's witty, he's insightful, and he cuts like a sharp knife with people that are stupid enough to say stupid things in front of him. Fox News is still somewhat unique. The big question is, because Rupert Murdoch is fading away and now his sons, it appears, are taking control, the big question is, are they just going to turn it into another MSNBC or a CNBC or another CNN? Which is exactly what we don't need. You know, people were talking about, oh, well, then somebody must be setting up a new conservative network that's going to take over Fox News, because that's where all these guys are going. Bill O'Reilly, all these guys, they're going to create a new bastion of conservatism. No, they're not. The newest news yesterday is Bill O'Reilly's decided that he's going to appear once a week on Glenn Beck's show. Glenn Beck? Are you kidding me? How incredibly sad is that? So these are curious days for Fox News. They recently unveiled a brand new studio, saying that that's going to take them into the 2020s and beyond. And it's an interesting looking studio. If you haven't read that article, you might want to consider it. Is that enough? And where are we going to continue to get our conservative news? I would ask you that you continue to listen here. I would ask you that you continue to listen to SHR. And utilize as many outlets as you can. Don't take it for rote that the standard media maggots, the American media maggots, are working for you. They're not. They're working against you, and they have been for years. You and I both know it. Enough of that. Off the platform. Here's another story. Sheriff David Clark says he's joining DHS. Clark says, I'm both honored and humbled to be appointed to this position. And this is from the WashingtonFreeBeacon.com. Now, this is another source of news that I do go to because it's right out of Washington. And it's going to give me a lot of stuff that, for hell's sake, the Washington Post sure as shit isn't. The Trump administration tapped Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark to serve as Assistant Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security for partnership and engagement. Clark, a tough-talking conservative firebrand recognized by his penchant for cowboy hats, announced the... Do we know another black guy that has a penchant for cowboy hats? No, probably not. Clark, a tough-talking conservative firebrand recognized by his penchant for cowboy hats, announced the appointment during an interview with a local Wisconsin radio station Wednesday afternoon.
Program, Sheriff David Clark, who joins me on the phone. And I guess we'll just start this way, Sheriff. Congratulations are in order, and welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Vicki. I appreciate that. And for your listeners who've been nothing but wonderful to me, that congratulations is because I will be leaving the position of sheriff to accept an appointment as an assistant secretary in the Department of Homeland Security. I'm both honored and humbled to be appointed to this position by Secretary Kelly, working for the Trump administration. And it will be in specifically the Office of Partnership and Programs with several branches within there. I'll be a liaison with state and local government, with the private sector, and one that's really near and dear to me, a liaison with state, local, and tribal law enforcement.
Okay, have we not said for quite some time, the interview continues, but you get the gist of it. We know that Clark is a Trump loyalist, and so perhaps this is Trump paying him back. He's been photographed in the White House with President Trump. He was kind of a Trump surrogate during the campaign. He was one of 3 black speakers who decided that he was going to endorse President Trump at the RNC convention. And, of course, he's a really vocal and advocate proponent of gun rights, and he has close ties to the NRA. Ooh, I said 3 bad initials. NRA. He's brazen, kind of like Trump. He doesn't take crap, kind of like Trump. And he has a tendency to be pretty provocative and sort of he tells you what he thinks right off the bat. So this continues to be another in a series of appointments that leave me scratching my head at the end of the week every week. I said it last night. It's a seesaw. It's a teeter-totter. We have Obama on the left. We have Trump on the right. Obama, when he left, his approval ratings were good. His policies were in the tank. It's the exact 180 with Trump. His approval ratings are in the tank. His policies are good, and it's bringing the country back. And still Donald Trump continues to confuse week after week after week. I said it at the beginning. I said it during a Hugh Hewitt conference back in 2015. We were all sitting around a table at an old spaghetti factory or Buca di Beppo down in Southern California. Not one person in that big group said, hey, I really like that Donald Trump as candidate, but he shook out. And I was going to vote for him for 2 reasons that I still continue to support today. He's not Hillary Rodham Clinton, and I think that we're going to get some really good SCOTUS appointments out of it. Number 1, I like Neil Gorsuch. Excellent job, Donald Trump. And for that matter, excellent job, Mitch McConnell, for making sure that Merrick Garland didn't get in there and slip under the radar. I'm going to give Mitch McConnell kudos for that. That's a good thing. And then I also heard that coming sometime this summer into the fall, there's going to be another appointment. There's going to be another vacancy in SCOTUS, just as a little teeny person told me in January of this year. So if that happens, that's 2 appointments. Now it's 2017. Trump goes until 2020. That's 3 more years. Do you possibly suppose that in the next 3 years, there may be another opening in SCOTUS? I say yes. I say very much true yes. Those will be the accomplishments of Trump. But anymore, he confounds me. I want to like him. I like a lot of his policies. I have always quantified him as the guy with the dead orange cat on top of his head. And it's very true. But even though he can be a flake, and many times I wish he really would take a cup of shut the fuck up and put down your damn cell phone, he can't do his job when he's undermined by the people on the inside. Now, I said last night in Sackheads Radio that I was going to name names about leakers. And we've gotten to the point of the program where I'm going to name names about people that are suspected of leaking within the White House. These are 2 separate stories that I discovered, and they happen to name one individual in common and another person. And you're going to have to do your very level best to try to suss it out yourself. I'm bringing this information to you. Certainly, for certain, it has not even been touched Not one molecule of this has been touched by the American media maggots for obvious reasons. I'm going to go with this first story. This is from truthfeed.com. And it says, the headline is, White House leaker identified. Leakers, plural, identified. In a Got News exclusive, sources indicate the White House leakers are top advisors to President Trump. Okay, that makes sense to me. During a past interview with Fox News, President Trump said he believed Obama officials still working in all areas of the government are responsible for the White House leaks. While President Trump may be correct, a new report is now pointing a finger at Trump's top advisors as the source of the White House leaks. From Got News. 2 separate National Security Council sources have confirmed that National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster and Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell have been leaking negative material about President Donald J. Trump to their allies in the anti-Trump media. Got News exclusively reports. It's very hard when your boss, the president, and your boss, the NSC advisor, see the world so differently, says one staffer who opposes regime change in Syria. Staffers on the National Security Council describe a culture of intimidation, especially for those who didn't come in under McMaster and support the Trump's campaign's commitment to put America first. It's like the Bush years never ended, notes one staffer who didn't come in under McMaster. I didn't sign up for this shit, and the American people didn't vote for it. The staffer also doubts that Democrats are to blame for withholding security clearances, especially for those with ties to General Michael Flynn. The Pentagon Undersecretary Mattis has been working with Senator John McCain to deny security clearances over the fictitious Russia investigation. McMaster uses Powell to plant negative stories in the Washington, D.C. media, our sources tell us. This is where it gets dodgy. We all know she slept her way to the top of NSC, working her way from the receptionist desk at Dick Armey's office, notes one NSC staffer. She has 0 qualifications, and given her ties to Huma Abedin, is a security risk. Dina Powell, who is often described as the Republican Huma Abedin, is a member of Vital Voices, an organization founded and co-chaired by Hillary Clinton. Dina Habib Powell wants everyone to know that she used to bring leftover, I can't even pronounce this name, Lukia, to school for lunch, and that she's a good friend of Hillary Clinton's aide, Huma Abedin, who worked with her husband at the Clinton-linked consultancy Teneo. Powell is also close to Valerie Jarrett. Now, munch over that just for a little bit. Think about that. Mull it over in your wheelhouse, because I've got another story on top of that to tell you when we come back. And come back, you please must.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads radio show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcasting team. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the final half hour, the final segment of this Thursday's edition of the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, which I quantify as the aftermath. It always occurs on Thursday, and this is all the shite that I couldn't fit into the Tuesday show, as well as I either didn't want to or were not motivated to direct or address during the Wednesday Sackheads radio show. So take it there, Sean. Pat Dollard missed out. There's some good shite to talk about. His loss, I'm sorry. But we're going to continue because we are, after all, Semper Gumby. Now, I told you about, I named a few names before we went to the break about people that might be leaking. Don't you want some kind of verification about that? In other words, don't you customarily want to look for another article or something that indicates that this isn't just a one-off kind of thing like the New York Times would do. The Washington Post would do, because they are well and truly the American media maggots. I don't pretend to be a journalist. I don't have the damn time. I'm a retiree. I have important shit to do, okay? Like nothing. Or be on the air. In any event, I found a second story. This one is from thegatewaypundit.com, something entirely different people. And the headline is this: Rumor, Dina Powell behind leaks to anti-Trump media. This is from May 16th, just 2 days ago. A new report raises an interesting perspective on the flood of leaks that have been plaguing the Trump administration. U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell is rumored to be behind the negative leaks to the press. Stop. Now, if this is out in the press, wouldn't you like to be a fly on the wall somewhere in the White House as people are quietly and reservedly discussing what it is that they're going to do about it? I'm sure no one is getting angry. Everyone is calm. They found their center. Namaste. Namaste. No. I bet that's not what's happening in the White House. Two sources from the National Security Council have come forward to say that Dina Powell has been leaking negative information about President Trump to anti-Trump media outlets, according to Got News. The sources feel that the Pentagon, under Mattis, has been working in conjunction with Senator John McCain to deny security clearances based on the bogus Russia investigation. It's alleged that Senator McCain was working alongside his close political ally, James Comey, when he was FBI director. We know that Dina Powell is frequently referred to as the Republican Huma Abedin, and she was a member, as I indicated, of Hillary Clinton's Vital Voices. She's a good friend of Huma Abedin. So this continues. Liz Cheney, the daughter of then Vice President Dick Cheney, described Powell in 2005 this is interesting, as, quote, an Arab woman who could serve as a role model to the Middle East. Powell took over staffing for the White House. She's using her neocon connections to now staff President Trump's National Security Council. Powell has a history of placing hits against her perceived rivals, say those who worked with her in Dick Armey's office. In the 1990s, she got in trouble leaking negative stories on none other than Ginny Thomas, the wife of Justice Clarence Thomas. The attacks alienated Powell from working with Armey's office, and she was exiled to the Republican National Committee. After several months of inquiry, Got News will also be breaking news about Dina Powell's time at Goldman Sachs and her relationship to former Goldman Sachs president and current director of Trump's National Economic Council, Gary Kahn, later in the week, as well as her connections to Ivanka and Jared Kushner. A senior administrator official confirmed via text message that Powell and Kahn have been having an affair. How much more salacious does this get? How much more dangerous do the leaks have to get? And where is it that the media, the American media maggots and the rest of the Democrats are with regard to Russia? Because as we all know, it's Russia, 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 24/7 Russia. Gosh, doesn't that make you wonder where perhaps a doctor who is a professional, an educated professional, and knows much about Russia, who would that be? That could be a gentleman named Stephen Cohen, and perhaps he spoke recently to an individual that I respect named Tucker Carlson.
And for decades, he taught and researched Russian politics at Princeton and NYU, and he joins us tonight. Professor Cohen, thanks a lot for coming on. So to start with the first of these two stories, the president is accused of passing critical intelligence to the Russians in a meeting at the White House. Do you believe that happened?
No, and nor have I, in these decades you mentioned, ever heard an elected member of Congress say that we should have no relations with the Russians at all. Presumably that would include nuclear weapons control. When I see, I guess it was a Democrat, it's on the bottom of your screen, asking what are the Russians doing in the White House anyway? Well, they're doing with President Trump the national security of our nation, because what's at stake here is a proposal by Putin of Russia, by Trump of America, to join hands in an alliance against international terrorism.
Right.
And I would have asked you, if you had asked me a few days ago, what's the number one threat to the United States today? I would have said international terrorism. I don't know if you agree, Tucker, but it's certainly up there. Today, I would say it's this assault on President Trump because it's been going on a year. And can we be clear? What he's being accused of is treason. This has never happened in America, that there's a Russian agent in the White House. And we've had a whole array of allegations, from Putin helped him get in the White House to his associates are doing wrong things with Russians.
Ooh, in chat room, Whiskey Dale, ooh, zing, bang, boom.
That Flynn did something wrong in talking, his former national security advisor did something wrong with talking to the Russian ambassador. There's no evidence that there was any wrongdoing, and indeed Flynn should have talked to the Russian ambassador. That was his job. So this is beyond belief now, and has become, by this I mean this assault on Trump and his loyalty, this has become a national security threat to us in itself.
So is the heart of this change, so as I noted a minute ago, Russia went from being, pretty much an afterthought to most people, to being at the very center of this very complex conspiracy theory. Is that all about trying to get Trump out of office, do you think, or are there other motives?
Well, I think two motives have driven this, I think, false narrative against Trump that he's somehow a Kremlin agent. There have been two forces. One is the Clinton wing of the Democratic Party, which doesn't want to admit she lost the election, wants to say, Clinton won, but Putin stole it from me.
Right.
And that may be because she wants to run again.
I'm not convinced. Maybe she does. Maybe she's waiting in the wings. I think the DNC is going to come to the conclusion pretty soon that she's not the future of the Democrat Party. I said it last week, and this is my opinion because it's coming out of California. I see it directing who's the future of the DNC and the Democrat Party. I think it's all pointing to Kamala Harris.
I think that's a possibility. At the same time, there has long been in Washington a powerful, let's call it the fourth branch of government, the intelligence services, who have opposed any rapprochement or cooperation with Russia. Remember, in 2016, President Obama worked out a deal with Russian President Putin for military cooperation in Syria. He said he was going to share intelligence with Russia, just the way Trump and the Russians were supposed to do the other day. Right. Our Department of Defense said it wouldn't share intelligence. And a few days later, they killed Syrian soldiers, violating the agreement, and that was into that. So we can ask, who is making our foreign policy in Washington today?
Well, who is making our foreign? I mean, the president is elected in part to do that. He ran explicitly on a closer relationship with Russia. Not everyone is for that.
That's right.
But he won the election by saying out loud, we have a common enemy in Islamic terror. And so isn't it constitutionally the president's role to determine our posture toward the rest of the world? Isn't that the whole point of electing a president?
Yeah, and so you and I have to ask a subversive question. Are there really three branches of government, or is there a fourth branch of government?
Aha. Well, I think you know the answer to that one, don't you?
These intel services. What we know as a fact is that Obama tried, not very hard, but he tried, for a military alliance with Putin in Syria against terrorism, and it was sabotaged by the Department of Defense and its allies in the intelligence services. Trump says, he said on the campaign trail, wouldn't it be great to cooperate with Russia? My answer is...
Listen to this. This makes a hell of a lot of sense.
It would be great, and Trump seems to want that to happen, but he's being thwarted. Every time he gets close, we get a new leak of a story.
If what you're saying is true, and that his attempt to change the course of American foreign policy was sabotaged by a government agency without his permission, I mean, that is totally outside the bounds of constitutional government. I hope you're wrong. I suspect you're not. Professor Cohen, thanks for joining us. Recently, the House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi of California argued that simply because there's so much tumult about Russia, so much shouting, that naturally there must be something there.
This is good. Whenever you have Nancy Pelosi anymore, because she and Jerry Brown from California, Fornicalia, are two of a pair. They both have onset dementia.
She put it.
I know it for a fact with Jerry Brown. Her, I'm betting.
As Yogi Berra said, it's too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. There's just something wrong with this picture. All at the same time as people are saying, and this you have to be careful because this is its own incident, but it's about Russia. And every day I ask the question, what do the Russians have on Donald Trump?
Right. What do the Russians have on Donald Trump? Maybe a bad piroshki.
Financially, politically, or personally, that he's always catering to them.
In other words, people are upset about Russia. There must be something there because they're upset. Therefore, we should be upset. Mathematicians have finally found a perfect circle, and it lies in Nancy Pelosi's logic. Senator Joe Manchin.
Yeah. What logic? Logic? From Nancy Pelosi, who frequently can't pronounce adverbs or words at all, for that matter? Yeah. Good point. From an article at lifezet.com. This is interesting. Former CIA director. Disclosure firestorm may be, quote, just kind of a flap. Former Central Intelligence Agency Director James Woolsey said President Donald Trump had the right to declassify material during a meeting last week with Russian officials, and the only debate can be over whether it was wise for any of a host of reasons during an interview Tuesday on The Laura Ingraham Show. Woolsey, who served under former President Bill Clinton, addressed alleged disclosures of sensitive information by Trump to Russian officials, reported Monday evening by the Washington Post. Anonymous intelligence sources told the Post that Trump shared classified information during a meeting with Russian officials, attended by Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, White House Deputy National Security Advisor for Strategy Dina Powell, and National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. It's a mess, Woolsey said. We're not talking about whether Trump has the right here. He does. He is the classification authority. The question is, was it wise? And it may not be wise for any host of reasons, one of which is they could have disclosed sources and methods, even though not directly. Nothing that the president unwittingly could have caused the disclosure of a source method if he named a date or a time or referred to a recognizable event or detail when he spoke to the Russians. Woolsey expressed his concern that such a disclosure could cause irreparable damage. But essentially what he said is, does he have the authority? And the answer is yes. Is that impeachable? Well, that depends upon what side your politics falls now, doesn't it? We've been talking about Trump, right? We've been speaking for the past hour, 45 minutes about Trump. But how did we get to Trump? We got here through the Obama administration. I found this interesting article, which is not that old, just came out this week. It's from thedailywire.com, and its headline is this: 5 times the Obama administration leaked classified information. Well, wait, James Woolsey. Really? Okay, so I guess he has the authority to do it, but that's never been done before. Oh, hold on that car wash. Daily Wire says, Democrats have short memory spans. Duh. As the mainstream media teams up with the political left to take down Donald Trump's presidency, it's worth maintaining some perspective on White House scandals, as reported by the self-proclaimed gatekeepers of truth. Much of the self-righteous indignation directed against President Trump is grounded in hypocrisy. When Democrats cry wolf over Trump unduly influencing law enforcement, one can't help but think of the egregiously corrupt and highly partisan Eric Holder. Eric Holder, who pardoned himself. Wouldn't you like to have that ability to reach up from on high, from a godlike position, and just go, ding, I absolve you, my son, of everything that you may have done? That was Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. So the Holder and Lynch Justice Departments. When Democrats whine about Trump's unsympathetic immigration policy, one can't help but wonder where the voices of opposition were during President Bill Clinton's State of the Union speeches. And I've played those before, have I not? Yes, I have. Now as the MSM, what I call the American media maggots, go berserk, hey, there's a Saloon you might like. Over reports of Trump allegedly revealing classified information from an ally to Russia, let's take a trip down memory lane and recall the countless times that former President Obama, the bejeweled darling of the left, did something that Democrats are now calling treasonous, unpatriotic, and traitorous. Here are 5 times the Obama administration leaked classified information. 1. That time Obama's CIA director leaked top-secret information about SEAL Team 6. In 2011, former CIA director Leon Panetta revealed top-secret information about the Osama bin Laden raid, reports The Federalist, saying, Panetta reportedly revealed the name of the Navy SEAL unit that carried out the raid and named their ground commander at a ceremony where Zero Dark 30 writer Mark Ball was in attendance, according to a report by the Inspector General of the Department of Defense. Panetta reportedly assumed all 1,300 people in attendance at the event had adequate security clearances to hear the top-secret information about the SEAL Team 6 raid, according to Politico. The report detailing Panetta's oversharing flies in the face of the Obama White House's claims they never shared any classified information with anyone they shouldn't have. Number 2, that time an Obama defense official leaked secret information about Israeli military operations against Iran. As Ben Shapiro pointed out, quote, an anonymous U.S. defense source leaked to the Times of London that Israel had cut a deal with the Saudis to use their airspace to strike Iran. The deal was scuttled. The official leaked the classified information of key ally Israel in June 2010, just as the Obama administration was gearing up to take a harsher stance against the Jewish state's settlement-building activities. Shock of shocks. Number 3, That time, a high-ranking official in Obama's Joint Chiefs of Staff leaked classified information about cyber attacks against Iran's nuclear facilities. The Federalist, again, says, in 2010, General James Cartwright, then vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, allegedly leaked to reporters classified information about cyber attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities. He reportedly shared documents about a highly sophisticated virus used to foil Iran's nuclear program to members of the media, but there was no outrage from the press about these disclosures. Cartwright pled guilty last October to giving false testimony to FBI agents about his involvement in the leaks, only to be pardoned by President Obama days before he left the White House. Yet, this got very little airtime on cable news channels. Number 4. That time, Vice President Joe Biden publicly revealed the highly secret identities of the SEAL Team 6 members behind the Osama bin Laden assassination operation. The leaks directly endangered the lives of the SEAL members. The Washington Examiner reports on Biden's infamous revelation. His reckless action put at risk the lives of every SEAL Team 6 member. The Taliban and other jihadists eager to avenge bin Laden now knew which unit to target. Stunned and shocked, SEAL members immediately realized they were going to be hunted by al-Qaeda sympathizers. Karen Vaughn, the mother of slain SEAL Aaron Vaughn, says that within hours after Mr. Biden's comments, her son called to tell her to wipe away every piece of information regarding the family on social media, Facebook, and Twitter. I never heard Aaron that afraid in his life, Mrs. Vaughn said in an interview. He told me, Mom, we're picking up chatter. We're not safe. You're not safe. Delete everything. According to Mrs. Vaughn, Mr. Biden essentially placed a bullseye on her son's back and that of all the other SEALs. He leaked classified information. SEAL Team 6 is a covert unit which is supposed to operate in the shadows. That's how they're able to conduct deadly raids on terrorist groups. Number 5. All those times the Obama administration leaked classified information about highly dangerous Israeli military operations in Syria. Ben Shapiro notes that on at least 2 occasions the Obama administration revealed classified about defensive and counteroffensive Israeli military strikes against Assad. May 2013, members of the Obama Pentagon leak information that Israel attacked the Damascus airport to stop a shipment of weapons to terrorist groups. Obama officials actually had to apologize for this leak since it endangered American lives. They blamed low-level employees. June 2013, the Obama administration leaked specifically information regarding Israeli Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missile sites. Weeks later, U.S. sources tell CNN that Israel attacked a Syrian installation full of Russian-provided missiles. That same month, American intelligence analysts tell the New York Times that Israeli strikes had not been effective. All that information, all of it, was classified. Syria is a close ally of Iran. So by leaking this information, the Obama administration compromised Israel's national security, leaving the Jewish state vulnerable to retaliation from Iran, a country that has repeatedly called for the complete annihilation of Israel and Russia, another key ally. And that, again, from our lovely, lovely people, the Obama administration. Again, the umbrage is horrific about President Trump. Well, President Trump is no god. He's not even a little g god. He's a guy with a dead orange cat on the top of his head. He's made some good choices, some good selections, but be easy to Trump. Since the show is not too far from ending, and I thank you all for listening, heads up. There are many, many people who are sharpening their knives right now in the White House, and they're going to be after you. And they've been there for quite some time. And they've been placed like deadly landmines. Like that funny little thing in the movie Alien Covenant that comes out of the pod, the face hugger that explodes and tries to stick its waffling tentacle down your trachea. Ooh, that movie's out, by the way. Don't think I'm not going to see it this weekend. I want to see it in IMAX. So people want to impeach Trump. They want to impeach you. Really? Is that going to work? Democrats, is that going to work? I think this is an interesting way of kind of wrapping things up. Mike Huckabee, take it away.
President Trump should come out and say, you want to impeach me? Knock yourselves out. Go ahead. Put the articles out there. Let's do it. Let's end the Democratic Party forever because, first of all, you're not going to have the votes to have it even come to impeachment in the House. And you're never going to get the votes in the Senate. So if that's what you want to do, just tell Maxine Waters and tell some of these other people, do it. Go for it. Knock yourselves out. Make this happen. And make Donald Trump a martyr and make him the most popular and effective president that we've had probably in our lifetime.
Well said, and actually very true. Here's an interesting point. There's an article, and I remember it in my wheelhouse, in my brain housing group. I don't have the citation right here, but apparently the Democrats are starting to circle the wagons and talking to themselves, psst, 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 hey, maybe it really is time for us to back off this impeachment pressure because maybe it's doing Donald Trump better than it's doing us. That's something to consider, isn't it?
Monsieur!
We'll meet again. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you very much for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon here on the Thursday on the Aftermath on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you will find me on Twitter and gab.ai. I'm at BZEP, B-Z-E-P. And you can find me on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. My original intro music is by Possessed Tranquility. If you're interested in them, you can find them at the website reverbnation.com. Promotional consideration by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And of course, as per normal, all of my tiaras are by My Little Pony.
I was singing this.
Thanks to my KC, my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consorting in less than an hour. Thanks for listening. God bless. Take care. Be safe. Come back.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night.
Good night, Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.